Connection. Every human being wants connection. And in connection, sure we've all experienced talking to someone, and that person not only is not looking at you, but kind of looking over your shoulders and seeing someone else. You feel really disconnected at that point from that person. What is a connection between people? Well, when you look at a person, when you're talking and you're looking them in the eyes, that's a deep connection because you're connecting through their eyes, the window to their soul, right? So you're really connecting to their neshama, to their soul, which is profound indeed. We connect, of course, through the words that we say. That the words we say, you know, can create a profound connection. So the other day, talking to somebody, and that person felt very insecure, so they couldn't look at me in the eyes, to look away, which I understood that the person was insecure. So I tried not to allow that to taint the way I look at that person or feel about the connection. Or when someone says something to you that isn't so wonderful, of course, our knee-jerk reaction is to kind of feel disconnected to this loved one. And it behooves us to not to lose the connection just because someone may be acted in a particular way. When you hug somebody, right? That hug is a connection. It's actually a deep connection because you hug the entirety of the person, front, the back, two hands like this. It's a one hand hug, a partial hug. A kiss is also profound connection. Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zurich and Kadesh Montreal. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We're in chapter 46, speaking about, brought up yesterday, a beautiful metaphor. A king leaves his palace with a whole retinue, with his ministers, servants, all sorts of high-ranking officials and important people of the palace, with a mission to go down to a dunghill where this pauper is living a wretched life, and the king doesn't send for him but goes himself to remove him from that place and take care of him fully, bring him into the inner chamber of the king, where he showers him with a love, expressing a love with hug and kisses. What would you do if that was done to you you would reciprocate. What we're learning here is about a reciprocal love. This is the metaphor that is being used. That is very powerful because reciprocal love is a love that we can all appreciate. The more someone did, the lesser you are of a person, the more you don't feel deserved when somebody does something amazing for you. So imagine in the metaphor over here, the king, he's got his right-hand man who is very knowledgeable about the kingdom and everything about the kingdom. So when he does something for the right-hand man, what's he going to feel? Is he going to reciprocate necessarily? Is he going to feel indebted to the king? He might be thinking the opposite. The king's indebted to me. I run his kingdom. I know more about the kingdom than he does. So you're going to feel that when the king showers him with a gift, he's going to feel great about it? Not necessarily. He might think I deserve more, right? But a wretched person who's living on a dunghill and the king comes and rescues him and brings him to the inner chamber, what are you going to feel? You feel, whoa, am I ever deserving of this? Yeah, you're living on a dunghill. You deserve it of nothing. The king himself came and rescued you and brought you into his palace? Wow, that sounds crazy. Now, right, this is a metaphor. So just let's go with the metaphor because it does sound crazy, right? And he brings us in there. The king brings a person in there and showers him with all good, with a hug, with a kiss. How would you'd melt? Even if you have a heart of stone, because you lived on a dunghill so long, you have a heart of stone, it would melt away in your desire to reciprocate to the king. I want to give back to you the love that you're showing to me. So this corresponds every single detail, even more than the metaphor, to God Almighty and the Jews' relationship to God. What does it mean? The king, right, in the metaphor, he's a mighty king. But who's mightier? God Almighty. He's a greater king than any king here on earth. Right? Than any physical king. Because a physical king, his territory extends just so far. But God as ruler, as king, his territory extends everywhere. This physical world, the spiritual worlds above, he's got an army behind him. Who's his army? Angels. That's his army. And how many does he have? Well, every regiment has a limited amount, but the regiments are not limited. So he's got an infinite amount of soldiers, if you will. You want to use that term. Angels, right? And those angels, by the way, intimately aware and connected to the divine. Those even divine attributes above are very like the king's right-hand man, right? The king's right-hand man, right? So who's the king's right-hand man? God's angels. They know intimately everything. And yet, what does God do? Yet before him, they count as nothing. To a king of flesh and blood, those ministers and, noblemen, they count for something, right? But not to God. Their existence is completely nullified before him, right? Even though they're fully aware of God, but their awareness is before God, they're nothing, right? All of the angels actually are asking, where's God's glory? And they say, God's glory is down here, the people of Israel. That's where God's glory is, down here with the people of Israel. In other words, God forsakes all of the spiritual world, everything, And he comes down here to the Jewish people. Where are the Jewish people? Where did he find them? Where did he find them? In Egypt. Egypt is called Erves Haaretz. It's called a dunghill. That's what Egypt is, a dunghill. Spiritual dunghill. Angels are not a spiritual dunghill. Angels are on a very lofty place. But God leaves that of no significance to God. And he comes down over here to the obscenity of the earth, the filth and the impurity of the earth, right? A lowly, disgraceful place, a dunghill. That's where the Jews were, Egypt, right? And what does God do? Do you remember Passover, the Haggadah? Lo yayidei malav lo yayidei saraf, not through an angel, not through a saraf. But God didn't send to the dunghill an angel to redeem us, but he himself came and took us out of Egypt. He himself came to the dunghill and took us out of Egypt himself, the king himself, right? Every detail so far. You see the correlation, yeah? And why did he do it? Why would he do that? Because he wants to bring us close to him. So he brings us into his palace, into his inner chamber, that we can have a real attachment with our soul to God. What kind of attachment? Through a kiss and an embrace. God gives a royal kiss to, a divine kiss to us. How? Well, actually, right now he's doing it. How so? Because kiss means two lips coming together, an exchange of breath. That's what a kiss is. Meaning, I'm lipping the words of God's Torah. I'm lipping, right? Saying his words. Tanya is God's words. I'm saying it. That's a kiss. Two lips coming together. My lips are saying what his lips are saying right now. God's saying this right now, right? And there's an exchange of breath, meaning God's breath, by me lipping his words, is now being brought into me. The breath of God, meaning his wisdom, is his breath that is giving me life, meaning his breath is inside of me. Just like when you blow into the balloon, your breath is in there. In a kiss, there's the breath of the person is in the other individual. So the breath of God is in me. That gives me vitality, gives me life, gives me not his wisdom, and his wisdom becomes my wisdom. That's what he did by bringing us into the inner chamber and giving us a kiss of him. He also gives us a royal embrace. He gives us a hug. What is a hug? So the metaphor the Zohar uses for the mitzvahs of God's mitzvahs are limbs. 248 limbs that God has, figuratively speaking, not physical limbs, right? But 248 ways that the will of God is expressed, right? When I when I have the will to raise my hand, what happens? My hand gets raised, as long as I'm healthy, right? Gets raised. Why? Because the will and the limb are bound up together. That whatever I will, my limb does, right? Meaning the will of God is bound up with the 248 mitzvahs of God. They're his limb, right? They're an expression of his will, what he wants. And what you want is an expression of who you are, right? So the mitzvah is the limbs of God that when we do the mitzvah, what are we getting? An embrace by the limbs of God, by his arms that embrace us. And interesting, just to carry the metaphor further, our right arm, our left arm, and there's also the body that embraces the individual. Right is chesed, gvura, tiferes, meaning the mitzvahs have an expression of being God's kindness, his discernment and judgment, and his compassion. So when you do a mitzvah, you have all of that because the mitzvah embodies that. And you doing the mitzvah, you get that royal embrace of God. Wow. What an amazing metaphor. And every detail of the metaphor fits in our personal connection with God, the Jewish people, with God Almighty. This is something to think about and contemplate and to make real for ourselves. Any questions, any comments? Clear? Clear, everybody? Okay, amazing. I'm going to go to Rambam. I'm going to learn the laws of Hanukkah, even though it's not Hanukkah. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zurich and Kadesh, Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. For those who missed last night, JLI's class, speaking about 3 different converts, colorful profiles.